Imagine discovering your hidden son at a NASA graduation, the same day your billionaire dreams suddenly feel hollow and meaningless. Daniel Hayes built an empire of wealth, while Naomi Carter built a family he never knew existed, until fate cruelly reunited them 18 years too late. Letters hidden, truths buried, and a rival who stepped in to be the father figure Daniel never had the chance to become. What happens when a mother's protective lie collides with a father's right to know his child? Can a family forged in secrets ever truly heal? Or will the wounds of betrayal prove too deep to mend? Subscribe now and drop a comment if you've ever had a shocking family revelation that turned your entire world upside down, because this story of second chances might just make you believe in love again. Daniel Hayes straightened his silk tie and adjusted his gold cufflinks. The morning sun glinted off his Rolex watch as he strode confidently into the NASA Space Center. Today was special, not just because he'd donated millions to the space program, but because he would sit front row at the astronaut graduation ceremony. "Mr. Hayes, we're honored to have you," said the NASA director, shaking his hand firmly. "Your donation made this year's program possible." Daniel smiled politely. "The honor is mine." At 39, Daniel had everything money could buy: a mansion on the hill, a collection of sports cars, and a successful tech company. But his house echoed with emptiness each night when he returned home alone. He followed the director to the VIP seating area. The auditorium buzzed with excited families clutching flowers and balloons. Pride shone on their faces as they waited to celebrate their loved ones. Daniel sat down and opened the glossy program. The front page showed a group photo of the graduating class, brilliant young minds ready to reach for the stars. His company would hire some of them. Others would train for space missions. As he flipped through the pages, families continued filing into the auditorium. Something made him look up, a feeling he couldn't explain, like a tug on his heart. That's when he saw her, Naomi Carter. His breath caught in his throat. She looked even more beautiful than he remembered. Her dark skin glowed against a yellow dress that hugged her curves. She wore her hair differently now. Natural curls framed her face instead of the straightened style she'd worn when they were together. Daniel hadn't seen her in nearly 20 years. Not since that terrible fight when she'd walked out of his apartment, tears streaming down her face. He'd been too proud to run after her. Naomi hadn't noticed him yet. She chatted with an older woman, her mother, as they found their seats about 10 rows back. Why was she here? Did she work for NASA now? The lights dimmed. The ceremony began. One by one, the graduates walked across the stage in their blue jumpsuits. Daniel applauded politely, but his eyes kept drifting back to Naomi. "Ethan Carter," the announcer called. A tall, lean young man walked confidently across the stage. His skin was a warm brown, lighter than Naomi's. His smile was wide and bright. Daniel felt the world tilt sideways. That face. Those eyes. The shape of his jaw. It was like looking at himself at 18. Same walk, same smile, same everything. Daniel's hands gripped the armrests. His heart hammered against his ribs. He watched as Naomi jumped to her feet, clapping wildly. Her face glowed with pride as she watched the young man, her son, accept his certificate. Her son, no, their son. Daniel couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The room spun around him as the truth crashed down. He had a son. A son he never knew existed. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Daniel sat frozen in his seat, unable to process what he'd seen. His mind raced with questions, with calculations. The boy looked about 18. 18 years ago, he and Naomi had still been together. When the ceremony ended, families rushed forward to embrace the graduates. Daniel rose slowly, legs unsteady beneath him. He had to talk to her. Had to know the truth. He spotted Naomi hugging the young man, Ethan, near the stage. Her mother stood beside them, taking photos. Daniel pushed through the crowd. With each step, his anger grew. How could she keep this from him? How could she hide his own child? "Naomi," he said when he reached them. She turned and her smile vanished. Her eyes widened in shock. "Daniel?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the crowd. Ethan looked between them, confused. "Mom, who's this?" Daniel stared at the boy, at his son. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. Same eyes, same nose, same cleft in his chin. "I think your mother has some explaining to do," Daniel said, his voice tight. Naomi grabbed his arm and pulled him aside. "Not here," she hissed. Not now. This is Ethan's day. When then? Daniel demanded. After another 18 years. Her eyes flashed with anger. You have no right. No right. He cut her off. That boy's mine, isn't he? Naomi's silence was answer enough. She looked away, her jaw clenched. He's yours, she finally whispered through gritted teeth. The confirmation hit Daniel like a physical blow. He had a son who didn't know him, a son who'd grown up without him. Mom? Ethan had followed them. What's going on? Daniel turned to him, taking in every detail of his face. I'm Daniel Hayes, he said, extending his hand. I'm an old friend of your mother's. Ethan shook his hand cautiously. Nice to meet you, sir. Thanks for supporting the program. Ethan, why don't you go find Grandma? Naomi suggested, her voice strained. I need to talk to Mr. Hayes alone for a minute. Ethan hesitated, looking between them. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, honey, just go. I'll be right there. Ethan backed away reluctantly. Daniel watched him go, feeling a strange ache in his chest. Why didn't you tell me? He asked when Ethan was out of earshot. Naomi's eyes were hard. You made your choice a long time ago, Daniel. Your company was more important than us. That's not fair, he protested. You walked out. You never gave me a chance to make it right. I was pregnant and alone most nights while you built your empire, she shot back. I needed a partner, not a provider. Before Daniel could respond, Ethan reappeared with his grandmother. The older woman's eyes narrowed when she saw Daniel. Mom, Grandma wants to take pictures, Ethan said. Naomi forced a smile. Of course, honey. She turned to Daniel. This discussion is over. No, Daniel said firmly. It's just beginning. Ethan looked between them, confusion turning to suspicion. Mom, what's going on? Who is this guy? Daniel couldn't hold back anymore. He's no one, Naomi cut in quickly. Don't lie to him, Daniel said. He deserves the truth. Ethan's eyes hardened. What truth? The tension stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Daniel saw fear flash across Naomi's face. I'm your father, he said simply. The words hung in the air. Ethan stared at him in shock, then turned to Naomi. Mom? He whispered. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. Ethan, I can explain, and is it true? Ethan demanded, his voice rising. People nearby turned to look. When Naomi nodded, Ethan's face crumpled. You lied to me? All these years? I was trying to protect you, she said desperately. Ethan backed away from both of them. Protect me? By lying about who I am? He looked at Daniel with undisguised anger. And you, where were you all this time? Too busy counting your money to care about me? I didn't know, Daniel said. I swear to you, I just found out. Ethan shook his head. I don't believe either of you. He turned and pushed through the crowd toward the exit. Ethan! Naomi called after him. She shot Daniel a furious look. See what you've done? She hurried after her son. Daniel followed, ignoring the curious stares of those around them. Outside in the parking lot, Ethan paced beside Naomi's car, his graduation certificate crumpled in his fist. How could you keep this from me? He demanded when Naomi reached him. You told me my father was dead. I never said he was dead, Naomi corrected. I said he wasn't part of our lives. Same thing, Ethan shouted. You let me believe he abandoned us or didn't care. Daniel approached cautiously. Ethan, don't blame your mother. She was just, don't tell me what to think, Ethan snapped. You don't know me. You're not my father. Not really. The words stung, but Daniel couldn't argue. He hadn't earned the title of father. Naomi's mother caught up to them, her face tight with anger. Naomi, what's going on? Why is he here? Not now, Mom, Naomi said wearily. Yes, now, the older woman insisted. She turned to Daniel. Haven't you done enough damage? Mrs. Carter, Daniel began. It's Miss Carter to you, she corrected coldly. And I think you should leave. Ethan yanked open the car door. I want to go home, he said to his grandmother. Of course, honey, she said, sending Daniel a withering look before getting into the driver's seat. Naomi hesitated, torn between following her son and continuing the conversation with Daniel. We need to talk, Daniel said quietly. Not now, she replied. You've done enough today. I want to know my son, he insisted. You lost that right 18 years ago, she said. She took a deep breath. If you want to talk, come by the house tomorrow. But I'm warning you. If you upset him again, that's it. You're out of our lives for good. She got into the car without waiting for his response. Daniel watched them drive away, feeling more alone than ever. He'd gained a son and lost him in the same moment. But he wouldn't give up. Not this time. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Find me an address for Naomi Carter," he instructed, "and cancel all my meetings for the next week." The next morning, Daniel sat in his car outside Naomi's modest two-story home. It was a far cry from his hillside mansion, but the flower boxes under the windows and the neatly trimmed lawn gave it a warmth his house lacked. He gathered his courage and walked to the door, a bag of pastries and coffee in hand, a peace offering. Naomi answered his knock. Her hair was pulled back and she wore no makeup. Even in worn jeans and a simple t-shirt, she took his breath away. "You're early," she said. "I couldn't wait," he admitted. She stepped aside to let him in. The house smelled of cinnamon and coffee. Family photos lined the walls, Ethan's entire life documented in snapshots. Daniel paused to look at them, his heart aching for all he'd missed. "He was a cute kid," he said softly. "The best," Naomi agreed. She led him to the kitchen and took the coffee and pastries. "Ethan's still sleeping." "He was up late. Is he okay?" She shrugged. "What do you think?" His whole world just got turned upside down. They sat at the kitchen table, an uncomfortable silence stretching between them. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel finally asked. Naomi sighed. "You were building your company, working 20-hour days. You barely had time for me, let alone a baby." "You should have given me the chance to try," he argued. "Like you tried with our relationship?" She shot back. "You kept saying, 'Just one more big deal, Naomi, just one more client.' I got tired of coming second." "That's not fair," Daniel protested. "I was building a future for us." "No," she said firmly. "You were building a future for yourself." "There's a difference." Before he could respond, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face hard when he saw Daniel. "What's he doing here?" he demanded. "We need to talk," Naomi said gently. "All of us," Ethan crossed his arms. "I have nothing to say to him." Daniel stood. "Ethan, I know you're angry and you have every right to be. But please just hear me out. Why should I?" Ethan challenged. "Where were you when I broke my arm in 3rd grade? Where were you when I won the state science fair? Where were you when I got into the NASA program?" Each question felt like a knife in Daniel's chest. "I didn't know," he said simply. "If I had, I would have been there." "Sure," Ethan scoffed. He turned to leave. "Ethan, please," Naomi called after him. "Just sit down. Have some breakfast." "I'm not hungry," he muttered, but he reluctantly took a seat at the far end of the table. An awkward silence fell. Daniel studied his son, noting how he slouched in his chair just like Daniel had at that age. "Congratulations on graduating," Daniel finally said. "NASA's program is incredibly competitive," Ethan shrugged. "I worked hard." "He was top of his class," Naomi said proudly. "That's amazing," Daniel said sincerely. "What's your specialty?" "Engineering," Ethan replied. "I'm focused on propulsion systems," Daniel nodded. "That's what I studied in college before I switched to business." Ethan looked at him with mild interest despite himself. "Really?" "Yeah, I wanted to build rockets when I was your age." A flicker of connection sparked between them, but it died when they heard the front door open. "Naomi?" "Ethan, I brought donuts," called a woman's voice. Ms. Carter appeared in the kitchen doorway. She froze when she saw Daniel. "What is he doing here?" she demanded, echoing Ethan's earlier question. "Mom, please," Naomi said. "We're trying to talk." Ms. Carter set the donut box on the counter with a thud. "After what he did to you? After he left you pregnant and alone?" "I didn't know she was pregnant," Daniel clarified, "and that makes it better," Ms. Carter asked scornfully. "You broke my daughter's heart." "Mom," Naomi said firmly. "This isn't helping." Ms. Carter pursed her lips. "Fine, but I'm staying right here." She took a seat beside Ethan, effectively creating battle lines across the kitchen table. They ate in tense silence. Daniel tried several times to engage Ethan in conversation, but his son responded with one-word answers, or not at all. Just as Daniel was about to make another attempt, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Ethan said, clearly eager to escape the tension. A moment later, he returned with a tall, good-looking black man about Daniel's age, Marcus. Ms. Carter greeted him warmly. "Come join us." Marcus stopped short when he saw Daniel. His friendly smile faded. "Hayes, what are you doing here?" Daniel stood. "Read. It's been a while." They stared at each other, years of rivalry crackling between them. "You know each other?" Ethan asked, looking between them. "We went to college together," Daniel explained. "Marcus was a few years ahead of me." "We were friends," Marcus added pointedly. "Until he stole my girl." Naomi rolled her eyes. "Marcus, don't start. That was 20 years ago. And you weren't even dating her," Daniel added. Marcus stepped closer. "Didn't stop you from swooping in the minute I introduced you." Daniel tensed. He didn't like the familiar way Marcus looked at Naomi, or how comfortable he seemed in her home. "Marcus comes for breakfast every Sunday," Ms. Carter explained, looking pleased. "He's like family." The implication was clear. Marcus belonged here. Daniel didn't. "I just wanted to congratulate the graduate," Marcus said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. "NASA's lucky to have you, kid." "Thanks, Marcus," Ethan said with genuine warmth. Daniel felt a stab of jealousy. This man had watched his son grow up, had probably attended his school events, his graduations, had been there for moments Daniel would never get back. "I should go," Daniel said stiffly. "Naomi, can we talk later?" "Privately." She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll call you." Daniel left feeling like an outsider. As he climbed into his car, he glanced back at the house. Through the window, he could see them all laughing together. A family. A family that didn't include him. His chest ached with regret for all he'd lost, for the life he could have had, for the son who looked at a stranger with more affection than he'd shown his own father. "I won't give up," he whispered to himself as he drove away. "I'll win them back, whatever it takes." Daniel spent the next 3 days buried in work, trying to distract himself from thoughts of Naomi and Ethan. But their faces kept appearing in his mind. The son he never knew he had. The woman he'd never stopped loving. When Naomi hadn't called by Wednesday, Daniel decided he'd waited long enough. He left his office early and drove to her house, his heart pounding as he parked in front. The porch light was on, casting a warm glow in the early evening darkness. Daniel rang the doorbell and waited, straightening his tie nervously. Naomi opened the door, surprise flashing across her face. She wore simple black pants and a blue blouse that made her dark eyes shine. "You didn't call," Daniel said. She sighed. "I've been busy. Ethan's been upset. Can I come in?" "Please?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. Daniel entered, immediately noticing the quiet in the house. "Is Ethan home?" he asked. "No, he's at training. NASA keeps them late." She led him to the living room. "Can I get you something to drink?" "Just water, thanks." Daniel sat on the couch, taking in the room while she went to the kitchen. Family photos covered the walls and shelves. A bookcase overflowed with science books and sci-fi novels. A NASA poster hung over the fireplace. Naomi returned with 2 glasses of water and sat in a chair across from him, keeping her distance. "How is he?" Daniel asked. "Angry, confused." She took a sip of water. "He feels betrayed. By both of us." Daniel leaned forward. "Naomi, I want to make this right. I want to be part of his life." "Part of your life?" She laughed without humor. "You can't just walk in after 18 years and expect us to welcome you with open arms." "I know that," he said. "But I want a chance." Her eyes softened slightly. "Why now, Daniel? Is it just because you found out about Ethan, or would you have even cared if you'd seen me without him?" The question stung. "That's not fair, isn't it?" She challenged. "You've had a successful life. Private jets, fancy cars, beautiful women on your arm at charity events. I've seen the photos in magazines." Daniel flinched. "That's not real." "None of it is. It seemed real enough when you chose it over us." Daniel stood and paced the room, stopping at a photo of a young Ethan in a science fair. His son grinned proudly next to a rocket model. "I would have chosen differently if I'd known," he said quietly. "I would have chosen you both." Naomi was silent for a long moment. "Maybe, but we'll never know, will we?" The front door opened before Daniel could respond. Ethan walked in, his NASA training uniform wrinkled from a long day. He stopped when he saw Daniel. "What's he doing here?" "Daniel just stopped by to talk," Naomi said carefully. Ethan's jaw tightened. "About what?" "About how he's suddenly interested in being a dad now that I'm an adult. Now that all the hard work is done." "Ethan," Naomi warned. Daniel stepped forward. "I deserve that. But I'm hoping we can start fresh." "Start fresh?" Ethan repeated. "Like the last 18 years didn't happen. Like you didn't miss everything." "I missed it because I didn't know," Daniel insisted. "If your mother had told me—" "Don't you dare blame her." Ethan cut him off, his voice rising. She raised me alone. She worked 2 jobs to put me through school. She was there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every success. Where were you? The bitter words hung in the air. Daniel felt their weight pressing on his chest. You're right, he said quietly. I wasn't there, and I can never make up for that. But I'm here now, and I want to know you. Ethan stared at him, conflict clear in his eyes. For a moment, Daniel thought he might soften. Then Ethan shook his head. I don't need you. I never have. He turned to his mother. I'm going to bed. Ethan, you haven't eaten? Naomi called after him. Not hungry, he replied, taking the stairs 2 at a time. They heard his bedroom door slam. Naomi sighed heavily. I should go, Daniel said. This was a mistake. Naomi walked him to the door. In the dim porch light, she looked tired. He just needs time, she said, not unkindly. And what about you? Daniel asked. Do you need time too? She looked up at him, and for a second he saw a flash of the girl he'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. His fingers itched to touch her face, to trace the curve of her cheek. I don't know what I need, she admitted. Daniel took a chance. Have dinner with me tomorrow. Just to talk. Daniel, please, Naomi, 1 dinner. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine, 1 dinner. But not at your place. Somewhere public. I'll pick you up at 7, he said, unable to hide his smile. As he walked to his car, he felt lighter than he had in days. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next evening, Daniel arrived at Naomi's house precisely at 7. He'd chosen a simple black suit, expensive but not flashy, and brought a small bouquet of yellow roses, which had been her favorite when they were young. Lila opened the door before he could knock, her expression sour. She's getting ready, she said, not inviting him in. Daniel held out the flowers awkwardly. These are for her. Lila took them with a tight smile. How thoughtful. She didn't move from the doorway. May I come in? He asked. She looked him up and down. You hurt her once before. I won't let it happen again. I don't intend to hurt her. No one ever intends to, she replied. But men like you, focused on money, on success, always end up choosing yourselves in the end. Daniel met her gaze steadily. I'm not the same man I was 20 years ago, Miss Carter, aren't you? She challenged. Still rich, still important, still used to getting whatever you want. Before Daniel could respond, Naomi appeared behind her mother. She wore a simple red dress that hugged her curves, her hair falling in loose curls around her shoulders. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. You look beautiful, he said softly. A hint of a smile touched Naomi's lips. Thank you. She kissed her mother's cheek. Don't wait up, Mom, Lila frowned. Where's Ethan? At Jason's house. They're working on some project. Lila shot Daniel a warning look. Have her home at a reasonable hour. Daniel bit back a smile. Yes, Mom. He led Naomi to his car, a sleek black Audi, and opened the door for her. As they drove away, he could feel Lila watching from the window. Your mother still doesn't like me, he observed. Naomi laughed. That's putting it mildly. She blamed you when I cried for weeks after we broke up. I cried too, Daniel admitted. She looked at him in surprise. You did? Not where anyone could see, he clarified. But yes, they drove in comfortable silence for a while. Daniel had chosen a small Italian restaurant, intimate but not too fancy. The owner greeted them personally and led them to a quiet corner table. After they ordered, Daniel reached across the table and took Naomi's hand. She let him, though he felt her tense slightly. I've missed you, he said simply. She withdrew her hand. Daniel, don't. This dinner is about Ethan, about figuring out how to move forward. Is it? He asked. Or is it about us too? She looked away. There is no us. There could be. The waiter brought their wine, interrupting the moment. Naomi took a long sip, clearly gathering her thoughts. Tell me about Ethan, Daniel said, changing the subject. What was he like as a baby? Her face softened. Beautiful. Perfect. He never cried much, just watched everything with those big eyes. Your eyes? When did he get interested in space? From the beginning, she said, smiling at the memory. His first word was moon. By 5, he could name all the planets. By 10, he was building his own rockets in the backyard. Pride swelled in Daniel's chest. He's remarkable. Yes, he is. She took another sip of wine. He gets his brains from you, I suppose. And his stubbornness, Daniel laughed. You were plenty stubborn yourself, as I recall. True, she admitted with a small smile. As they ate, the years seemed to melt away. They reminisced about college, about their first apartment together, about dreams they'd once shared. For a little while it was almost like old times. "Why did you never marry?" Daniel asked as they finished dessert. "Someone like Marcus would have jumped at the chance." A shadow crossed her face. Marcus asked. "Several times, but I was focused on raising Ethan, on my career." She hesitated. "And I suppose part of me never got over you." The admission hung between them, fragile as glass. "I never got over you either," Daniel said softly. Their eyes met across the table. Daniel felt a familiar pull, the connection that had drawn them together from the start. Then Naomi's phone rang, breaking the moment. She checked the screen, her brow furrowing. "It's Ethan," she said, answering quickly. "Honey, what's wrong?" Daniel watched her face change from concern to annoyance. "Ethan, that's not fair," she said. "We're just having dinner." "No, I'm not. We'll talk about this when I get home." She hung up, sighing. "He's upset I'm with you." He went home and found my mother, who of course told him we were out together. "I should get you back," Daniel said, hiding his disappointment. He paid the bill despite her protests. On the drive home, the easy warmth between them had cooled. When they pulled up to her house, Daniel saw Ethan watching from the living room window. "I had a nice time," Naomi said, despite the interruption. "Me too," Daniel hesitated. "Can I see you again?" She glanced at the house. "Let's take it slow, Daniel. For Ethan's sake." "I understand." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. "This is for you. Open it later." She took it cautiously. "What is it?" "Something I should have given you a long time ago." Daniel watched her walk to the front door, waiting until she was safely inside before driving away. He hoped she would understand what the gift meant, that she would give him another chance. The next morning, Daniel was surprised by a call from Naomi. "The letters," she said without preamble. "You really wrote them?" Daniel smiled. Inside the box he'd given her were 5 letters, dated from the weeks after their breakup. Letters of apology, of regret, of love. Letters he'd written but never sent. "Every word," he confirmed. "Why didn't you mail them?" she asked. "Why didn't you come find me?" "I did try," he admitted. "But your mother said you didn't want to see me. After the 3rd time I stopped trying." "My mother?" Naomi's voice was tight with anger. "She told you that?" "She never gave you my messages." "No," Naomi said. "She told me you never called, never came by. That you'd moved on quickly." The realization of Lila's interference hung between them. Years lost because of one woman's protective instincts. "I need to talk to my mother," Naomi said. "Can you come over tonight? There's something I think you should hear." That evening, Daniel arrived to find Naomi and Lila in a heated discussion in the kitchen. They fell silent when he entered. Lila looked both defiant and ashamed. "I suppose you've come to blame me," she said. "Mom," Naomi warned. Daniel took a deep breath. "I understand why you did it, Miss Carter. You were protecting your daughter." "Yes, I was," Lila said firmly. "You broke her heart once. I wasn't going to let you do it again, especially not when she was carrying your child. But it wasn't your decision to make," Naomi said. "You should have told me he called. You should have given me his letters." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "You were so young, baby. You were hurting so much. And then when you found out about Ethan," she looked at Daniel. "I did what I thought was best." Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand, but you're right. Naomi deserved to know. She deserved the chance to decide for herself." Lila wiped her eyes. "Would you have really stepped up? Been a father to Ethan? Given up your big dreams to change diapers and work a regular job?" The question hung in the air. It was one Daniel had asked himself many times in the past few days. "I would have tried," he said honestly. "I can't promise I would have been perfect, but I would have been there." Naomi touched his arm gently. "We'll never know what might have been. All we can do now is move forward." From the doorway, Ethan watched them silently. When Daniel noticed him, the young man didn't look away. "There were letters?" Ethan asked. Naomi nodded. "Your father wrote to me after we broke up. Grandma kept them from me." Ethan looked at his grandmother, shock and betrayal in his eyes. "You lied?" "To both of them?" Lila straightened her shoulders. "I was protecting our family. By keeping me from my father?" Ethan's voice cracked. "By letting me think he didn't want me?" "Ethan," Naomi began, but he cut her off. "Everyone's been lying to me my whole life." He stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. "Ethan!" Naomi called, rushing after him. Daniel followed them outside where Ethan was pacing on the lawn, his hands clenched into fists. "Honey, please," Naomi pleaded. "We need to talk about this." "What's there to talk about?" Ethan demanded. "Grandma kept Dad's letters. You never told me who my father was. He never bothered to look hard enough to find us. Everyone failed me." The word Dad hung in the air. It was the first time Ethan had acknowledged Daniel as his father. Daniel stepped forward cautiously. "You're right to be angry, Ethan. We all made mistakes." "Big ones," Ethan agreed bitterly. "But we're here now," Daniel continued. "All of us. And I'd like a chance to be your father if you'll let me." Ethan looked at him, years of hurt and confusion in his eyes. "I don't know if I can trust any of you." "Then give us a chance to earn your trust," Naomi said softly. "Starting right now. No more secrets. No more lies." Ethan looked between them, conflict clear on his face. Finally, he nodded once. "Fine, but I'm still mad at all of you. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start." Daniel would take it. Later that night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Daniel and Naomi sat on her back porch swing. Stars twinkled overhead, reminding Daniel of their college days when they'd lie on the grass outside his dorm, planning their future together. "I can't believe my mother kept those letters," Naomi said, breaking the silence. "She thought she was doing the right thing," Daniel replied. "Maybe." Naomi sighed. "But she had no right to make that choice for me. For us." Daniel looked at her in the moonlight. She was even more beautiful now than she had been at 20. Motherhood and time had added a depth to her beauty, a quiet strength. "If you had gotten the letters, would it have changed anything?" he asked. She considered the question. "I don't know. I was so hurt, so angry. And then when I found out I was pregnant," she shook her head, "I'd convinced myself you didn't care about us, that your work would always come first." "I cared," Daniel said softly, "more than I knew how to show. And now?" she asked, meeting his eyes. "What do you want now, Daniel?" He didn't hesitate. "A second chance. With you. With Ethan. With the family we should have been." She looked away. "It's not that simple. 18 years have passed. We're different people now. Some things don't change," he said, taking her hand. "How I feel about you hasn't changed." Her fingers tightened around his. "We can't just pick up where we left off." "I know." Daniel lifted her hand to his lips. "But maybe we can start something new." She didn't pull away. Under the starlit sky, with the scent of jasmine in the air, Daniel felt hope stir in his chest. It wouldn't be easy. There were years of hurt and misunderstanding to overcome. But tonight, sitting beside the woman he'd never stopped loving, watching the stars that had guided their son's dreams, Daniel believed that second chances were possible. The next morning, Daniel arrived at Naomi's house bright and early. He'd barely slept, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. He knocked on the door, a box of fresh donuts in one hand and a folder in the other. Ethan answered, his expression guarded but not hostile. "You're here early," he said. Daniel held up the donut box. "Peace offering." Ethan stepped aside to let him in. "Mom's in the shower. Grandma went to church." They sat awkwardly at the kitchen table. Daniel pushed the donuts toward Ethan, who took one after a moment's hesitation. "I have something for you," Daniel said, sliding the folder across the table. "If you're interested." Ethan opened it cautiously. Inside were schematics for a new propulsion system being developed at Daniel's company. "This is classified," Ethan said, his eyes widening as he flipped through the pages. "How did you get these?" "I own the company," Daniel reminded him. "We're working with NASA on the next generation of engines. I thought you might want to see what we're doing." Ethan's professional interest overtook his personal feelings. He studied the diagrams intently, asking technical questions that Daniel was happy to answer. For a few minutes, they were just two engineers discussing a fascinating problem. When Naomi joined them, she smiled at the sight of her son, and his father bent over the schematics, deep in conversation. "What's all this?" she asked. "Dad's company is developing a new propulsion system," Ethan said, the word Dad slipping out naturally this time. He caught himself looking embarrassed. Daniel pretended not to notice, though his heart leapt at the word. "I thought Ethan might have some insights. He's the expert, after all." Naomi watched them with a mix of hope and caution in her eyes. Daniel knew she was worried, about Ethan getting hurt, about her own heart being broken again. "I have an idea," Daniel said. "Why don't I give Ethan a tour of our research facility tomorrow?" He might enjoy seeing what we're working on. Ethan looked up, interest clear in his eyes despite his attempt to seem indifferent. That would be cool, I guess. Maybe your mom could join us, Daniel suggested, looking at Naomi hopefully. I have work, she said. But you two should go. Daniel nodded, hiding his disappointment. He'd hoped to spend the day with both of them, but he understood Naomi's caution. As he was leaving, Naomi walked him to the door. Thank you, she said quietly, for trying with him. He's my son, Daniel replied simply. I want to know him. She hesitated, then reached out and squeezed his hand briefly. One day at a time, okay? This is all new for him, for all of us. Daniel held her gaze. One day at a time, he agreed. As he drove away, he realized something had shifted. The hurt and anger were still there, but underneath the foundation of something new was forming, a bridge across 18 years of absence. A chance to build the family they should have been all along. That night, Daniel sat alone in his massive living room, looking at old photos of himself and Naomi from college. They'd been so young, so full of dreams. In one photo, they stood arm in arm at a football game, their faces glowing with youth and love. I'll make it right, he whispered to the smiling girl in the photo. I promise. He set the photo on his desk, a reminder of what he was fighting for. Not just his son, but the only woman he'd ever truly loved. The family he should have had. Tomorrow was another chance. And Daniel Hayes wasn't going to waste it. The next morning, Daniel waited outside his company's research center, watching for Ethan's car. He'd barely slept, too excited about spending the day with his son. He'd arranged special access to the most advanced projects, hoping to impress Ethan with the cutting-edge technology. At exactly 9 o'clock, Ethan pulled up in a worn blue Honda. Daniel smiled, remembering his own first car, a beat-up truck he'd driven until it died on the highway during his senior year of college. Good morning, Daniel greeted him as Ethan approached. Did you find the place okay? GPS, Ethan said with a shrug, looking up at the gleaming glass building. This is all yours? Pride swelled in Daniel's chest. The whole campus. 5 buildings, 3,000 employees. Ethan whistled softly. Not bad. Come on, Daniel said, leading him toward the entrance. Let me show you what we're working on. Inside, employees nodded respectfully as Daniel passed. A few looked curiously at Ethan, clearly noting the resemblance between father and son. Mr. Hayes, a young assistant, greeted them. The team is ready whenever you are. Thanks, Amy. This is my son, Ethan Carter. He'll be joining us today. Daniel watched Ethan's face as the words, my son, registered. The young man didn't object, though his expression remained guarded. The research lab took up an entire floor. Scientists in white coats worked at stations filled with equipment that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. Ethan's eyes widened as he took it all in. This is where we develop propulsion technology, Daniel explained. Some of it ends up at NASA. A tall man with gray hair approached them. Daniel, and this must be the astronaut we've heard about. Daniel clapped the man on the shoulder. Ethan, this is Dr. Franklin. He's our head of research. Pleasure to meet you. Sir, Ethan said, shaking the scientist's hand. The pleasure's mine, Dr. Franklin replied warmly. We've heard great things about you from NASA. Your work on the new cooling system was quite impressive. Surprise flashed across Ethan's face. You know about that? Of course. We keep tabs on promising young engineers. Dr. Franklin winked at Daniel. Especially ones with good genes. As Dr. Franklin led them through the lab, explaining various projects, Daniel watched his son. Ethan asked intelligent questions, his initial reluctance giving way to genuine interest. By lunchtime, he was deep in conversation with a team working on a new fuel mix, completely in his element. He's brilliant, Dr. Franklin said quietly to Daniel as they watched Ethan discuss equations with one of the scientists. NASA's lucky to have him. I know, Daniel replied, his chest tight with pride and regret. All those years missed. All those moments he should have been there to see his son's mind develop, to nurture his talents. During lunch in Daniel's private dining room, Ethan seemed more relaxed. So what do you think? Daniel asked. It's impressive, Ethan admitted. The work you're doing on the plasma injectors could revolutionize deep space travel. Daniel nodded. That's the goal. To help people like you get further into space. Ethan played with his fork. Why did you switch from engineering to business? Mom said you were studying to be an engineer in college. Daniel considered the question. I wanted to make enough money to be comfortable. To provide for... He paused. For the family I thought I'd have with your mother. Ethan looked up, surprise in his eyes. We had plans, Daniel continued. We were going to get married after graduation, have kids, buy a house with a big yard. What happened? Ethan asked softly. Daniel sighed. I got ambitious, caught up in the excitement of building something big. I worked too much, paid too little attention to what really mattered. He met Ethan's gaze directly. It's the biggest regret of my life. For the first time, Ethan's expression held something other than anger or caution. There was curiosity there, maybe even the beginning of understanding. If you had known about me, Ethan asked, what would you have done? Daniel didn't hesitate. I would have married your mother, supported you both. Been there for your first steps, your first words, your first day of school? You can't know that for sure, Ethan challenged. You're right, Daniel admitted. I can't, but I'd like to think I would have been smart enough not to lose the two most important people in my life. A comfortable silence fell between them. When they finished lunch, Ethan seemed reluctant to leave. We have a project I think you'd find interesting, Daniel said. A simulation of the new engine design. Want to see it? Ethan nodded. Lead the way. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the simulation lab, testing different configurations of the engine. Daniel watched with pride as Ethan quickly grasped complex concepts, offering suggestions that impressed even the senior engineers. You should hire this kid, Dr. Franklin told Daniel as they prepared to leave. He's already taken, Daniel replied with a smile. NASA got to him first. Outside, as evening approached, Daniel walked Ethan to his car. Thanks for showing me around, Ethan said. It was interesting. Anytime, Daniel replied. Maybe we could do it again sometime? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, maybe. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress. Daniel watched his son drive away, hope warming his chest despite the cool evening air. When he called Naomi that night to tell her about the day, she sounded pleased. He talked about it all through dinner, she said. I haven't seen him this excited about something in a while. He's incredible, Naomi, Daniel said. So smart, so confident. You did an amazing job raising him, her voice softened. Thank you. Have dinner with me this weekend, Daniel suggested. Just us. We need to talk about what happens next. After a pause, she agreed. Saturday, 7 o'clock. Saturday evening found them at a quiet restaurant overlooking the city. Daniel had reserved a private corner table with a view of the lights below. Naomi wore a simple black dress that took his breath away. Her hair was swept up, revealing the elegant curve of her neck. Daniel couldn't take his eyes off her. You look beautiful, he said as they settled at the table. A slight blush colored her cheeks. Thank you. You don't look so bad yourself. They ordered wine and appetizers. The conversation flowed easily as Naomi shared stories about Ethan's childhood, his first science experiment that left a burn mark on the kitchen table, his determination to build a rocket for his 8th grade science fair, his high school graduation where he gave the valedictorian speech. I wish I'd been there, Daniel said softly. Naomi's eyes reflected understanding. I know. I want to be part of his life now, Daniel continued. And yours if you'll let me. She took a sip of wine, considering him over the glass. What exactly are you suggesting, Daniel? He reached across the table for her hand. I'm suggesting we try again. You, me, Ethan, a family. It's not that simple, she said, but she didn't pull her hand away. Ethan's just getting used to having you around. And you and I. There's a lot of water under that bridge. I know. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. But I never stopped loving you, Naomi. Not in 20 years. She looked down at their joined hands. There were other women. No one that mattered, he said honestly. No one like you. A small smile touched her lips. Always the smooth talker. I mean it. His voice was earnest. These past few days being around you and Ethan, I felt more alive than I have in years. My house, my company, my money, none of it means anything without someone to share it with. Naomi studied his face. The old Daniel would never have said that. I'm not the old Daniel, he replied. I've had 18 years to realize what matters. As they finished dinner, Naomi seemed more relaxed. They shared a dessert, their spoons occasionally touching. Daniel felt like he was 20 again, falling in love with the most beautiful girl on campus. What are you thinking? He asked as they walked to his car. I'm thinking we still have a long way to go, she said, but I'm willing to see where this leads. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was enough for now. Daniel drove her home, his heart lighter than it had been in years. At her door he hesitated. "May I kiss you goodnight?" She looked up at him, her eyes soft in the porch light. "Yes." He leaned down, touching his lips to hers gently. The kiss was brief but electric, sending warmth through his entire body. When they parted, Naomi's eyes remained closed for a moment. "Good night, Daniel," she whispered. "Good night, Naomi." As he drove home, Daniel couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, he felt truly hopeful about the future. The next morning, Daniel was awakened by his phone ringing. Groggily, he checked the screen. "Naomi, hello?" He answered, instantly alert. "Daniel." Her voice was tight with fear. "Hey, it's Ethan. He's in the hospital." Daniel sat bolt upright. "What happened?" "Is he okay?" "He collapsed during training. They think it's exhaustion and dehydration, but they're running tests." Her voice broke. "Can you come?" "I'm on my way," he said, already scrambling for clothes. "Which hospital?" 20 minutes later, Daniel rushed through the doors of the NASA Medical Center. He found Naomi in the waiting room, her face pale with worry. Lila sat beside her, her usual hostility toward Daniel replaced by shared concern for Ethan. "Any news?" Daniel asked, sitting beside Naomi and taking her hand. She shook her head. "They're still running tests. The doctor said his heart rate was irregular." Daniel felt a cold fear grip him. "Can we see him?" "They said they'd come get us when he's stabilized." Daniel held Naomi's hand tightly, offering silent support as they waited. Lila watched them without comment, her usual sharp remarks held back in the face of the crisis. After what felt like hours, a doctor approached them. "Mrs. Carter, your son is stable now. You can see him." "We're his parents," Daniel said, standing with Naomi. "Both of us." The doctor nodded. "Of course. Follow me." Ethan lay in a hospital bed, looking young and vulnerable despite his athletic build. His face was pale against the white sheets, an IV drip attached to his arm. He opened his eyes as they entered. "Mom," he said weakly. "Dad." The word sent a rush of emotion through Daniel. He moved to Ethan's side, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Hey, kiddo, you gave us quite a scare." Ethan managed a small smile. "Sorry." Naomi touched his forehead, checking for fever with a mother's instinct. "How do you feel?" "Tired," Ethan admitted. "And stupid. I skipped breakfast and pushed too hard during training." "The doctor mentioned an irregular heartbeat," Daniel said, trying to keep the worry from his voice. Ethan shrugged. "They said it's probably just stress and dehydration. They want to monitor me overnight to be sure." Naomi looked relieved, but Daniel noticed the concern still lingering in her eyes. He felt it too, the parental fear that never fully disappears when your child is ill or injured. "I'll stay with you," Naomi said, pulling a chair closer to the bed. "Mom, you don't have to." "I'm fine. I'm staying," she insisted. "We both are," Daniel added, surprising himself as much as them. Ethan looked between his parents, too tired to argue. He closed his eyes, drifting back to sleep. Naomi sat on one side of the bed, Daniel on the other. They kept a quiet vigil as their son slept. Hours passed. Lila brought them coffee and sandwiches, then left to go home and rest. Nurses came and went, checking Ethan's vitals. Through it all, Daniel stayed, watching over the son he'd just begun to know. As night fell, Naomi dozed in her chair. Daniel covered her with his jacket, then resumed his seat, unwilling to leave even for a moment. Around midnight, Ethan stirred. His eyes opened, focusing on Daniel with surprise. "You're still here," he whispered, careful not to wake Naomi. "Of course," Daniel replied. "You're my son." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "Why now?" he finally asked. "Why do you care now when you didn't before?" The question pierced Daniel's heart. "I always would have cared, Ethan. If I'd known about you, nothing would have kept me away. But how do I know that?" Ethan pressed, his voice still weak but his eyes clear and challenging. "How do I know you wouldn't have chosen your company over us, just like Mom said you did before?" Daniel leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "Because I've spent 18 years building an empire that feels empty every night when I go home. Because nothing I've accomplished means anything compared to what your mother created in you." He touched Ethan's hand carefully. "And because I'm here now and I won't make the same mistake twice." Ethan studied his father's face, searching for truth or deception. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him because he nodded slightly. "Okay," he said simply. "It wasn't forgiveness or acceptance, not fully." But it was a beginning. Daniel felt something tight in his chest loosen just a bit. "Get some rest," he told his son. "I'll be right here." Ethan closed his eyes. Soon his breathing deepened as he drifted back to sleep. Daniel settled back in his chair, keeping watch through the night. When morning came, Naomi woke to find Daniel still there, tired but alert. Their eyes met over Ethan's sleeping form, and something passed between them. A shared concern, a shared love for their son. Daniel saw gratitude in her eyes, and perhaps something more. The doctor arrived early, reviewing Ethan's charts. His heart rhythm has stabilized, and his hydration levels are back to normal. "If the morning tests look good, he can go home today." "Thank you, doctor," Naomi said, relief evident in her voice. When Ethan woke, he seemed stronger. Some color had returned to his cheeks, and he sat up eagerly when a nurse brought breakfast. "You guys didn't have to stay all night," he said, looking embarrassed by their concern. "Yes, we did," Naomi replied, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "That's what parents do." Daniel caught the significant look she gave him, including him in that statement. It felt like being welcomed into a circle that had been closed to him for too long. By afternoon, Ethan was cleared to go home. Daniel insisted on driving them, and neither Naomi nor Ethan objected. At the house, Daniel carried Ethan's bag inside while Naomi helped their son to the couch. "I can walk, Mom," Ethan protested. "I'm not an invalid." "Humor me," she replied, tucking a blanket around him despite his eye roll. Daniel smiled at the familiar mother-son interaction. This was what he'd missed. The small moments, the casual affection, the family rhythms. "I'll make some soup," Naomi said, heading to the kitchen. "I'll help," Daniel offered, following her. In the kitchen, away from Ethan's ears, Naomi turned to Daniel. "Thank you for staying last night, for being there for him." "I wouldn't have been anywhere else," he said simply. She nodded, her eyes soft. "I know that now." They worked together, preparing lunch, moving around the kitchen in a surprisingly comfortable rhythm. Daniel found bowls while Naomi heated soup. He sliced bread while she made tea. It felt natural, as though they'd been doing this together for years instead of days. When they brought the food to Ethan, he watched them with curious eyes. "You two seem cozy." Naomi blushed slightly. "We're just trying to take care of you." "Uh-huh," Ethan said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "Whatever you say, Mom." The three of them ate together, the conversation easy and light. When Ethan's eyelids began to droop, Naomi insisted he go upstairs to rest in his own bed. "I'm fine right here," he protested. "Bed," she said firmly. "Doctor's orders." The doctor said to rest, not specifically in bed, Ethan argued, but he was already standing up. "Listen to your mother," Daniel said. Surprising himself with how paternal he sounded, Ethan gave him an amused look. "Already playing the dad card, huh?" "Trying to," Daniel admitted. A small smile touched Ethan's lips. "Not bad." He headed upstairs, moving slower than usual but steady on his feet. Left alone with Naomi, Daniel helped clean up from lunch. Their hands brushed as they both reached for the same plate, sending a tingle up his arm. "I should probably go," he said reluctantly. "Let you both rest." Naomi looked up at him. "You could stay, if you want." The invitation hung between them, simple but significant. "I'd like that," Daniel replied. They spent the afternoon quietly. Naomi checked on Ethan periodically, finding him sound asleep each time. Daniel made coffee, and they sat on the back porch watching birds flit around the feeder hanging from an old oak tree. "Did you hang that?" Daniel asked, nodding toward the bird feeder. Naomi nodded. When Ethan was 10, he was doing a science project on migration patterns. "We spent hours watching which birds came when." Daniel smiled, imagining a young Ethan with a notebook, carefully recording his observations. "He's always been curious about the world, just like you," Naomi said softly. "Sometimes it was hard seeing so much of you in him." Daniel turned to her. "I'm sorry, Naomi, for everything you had to do alone." She was quiet for a moment, watching a cardinal land on the feeder. "It wasn't all hard. He brought me so much joy. Still does." She looked at Daniel. "And now he has both of us." The simple statement filled Daniel with a warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. He reached for Naomi's hand and she let him take it, their fingers intertwining comfortably. Later, as evening approached, the doorbell rang. Naomi went to answer it, returning with Marcus in tow. He stopped short when he saw Daniel. "I didn't realize you had company," he said stiffly. Daniel stayed to help with Ethan, Naomi explained. He's been at the hospital since yesterday. Marcus's expression darkened. I see. He held up a small gift bag. I brought some of that tea Ethan likes. When I heard he was sick, that was thoughtful, Marcus. Thank you. Naomi took the bag. Would you like to stay for dinner? I was just about to start cooking. Marcus glanced at Daniel, clearly uncomfortable. I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding, Naomi assured him. Your family. The words stung Daniel more than he expected. Marcus had been there all these years, filling the space that should have been his. Being family while Daniel built his empire alone. I'll check on Ethan, Daniel said, excusing himself. Upstairs, he found Ethan awake, scrolling through his phone. Hey, Daniel said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Feeling better? Ethan nodded. Much, just tired. Marcus is here, Daniel told him. He brought you some tea. Cool. Ethan studied his father's face. You don't like him much, do you? Daniel was surprised by the direct question. It's complicated. We have history. Because of Mom? Daniel nodded. That's part of it. Ethan set his phone down. He's been around a lot. Ever since I can remember, always helping Mom with stuff, taking me to games when I was a kid. He paused. I used to wish he was my dad. The admission hurt, but Daniel understood. He was there for you. That counts for a lot. Yeah, Ethan hesitated. But he's not my dad. You are. The simple statement nearly undid Daniel. He had to look away for a moment to compose himself. I want to be, he said when he could trust his voice. If you'll let me. Ethan nodded slowly. I think I'd like to try that. When they went downstairs, they found Naomi and Marcus in the kitchen. Marcus was chopping vegetables while Naomi stirred something on the stove. They looked comfortable together, a team built over years of friendship. Look who's up, Naomi said brightly when she saw Ethan. Feeling better, honey? Much, Ethan replied. Hey, Marcus. Hey, champ. Marcus smiled warmly at Ethan. Heard you gave everyone a scare. Just a little dehydration, Ethan shrugged. No big deal. Still, you gotta take care of yourself, Marcus said, his tone gently scolding. NASA needs their best engineer in top shape. Daniel felt a twist of jealousy at the easy relationship between them. This was what he'd missed. The casual conversations, the inside jokes, the daily moments that built connections. Can I help with dinner? He asked, determined not to be pushed aside. Sure, Naomi said. You can set the table. The four of them worked together, an awkward dance as Daniel tried to find his place in a rhythm established long before his arrival. Ethan seemed amused by the tension between the two men, while Naomi did her best to keep conversation flowing smoothly. During dinner, Marcus kept the focus on Ethan, asking about his NASA training and future plans. Daniel noticed how well Marcus knew his son, his interests, his achievements, his challenges. Remember when you built that model rocket that went through Mrs. Peterson's window? Marcus laughed. Your mom nearly had a heart attack. Ethan grinned. You helped me pay for the replacement, though. Had to, Marcus replied. It was partly my fault for suggesting the extra fuel. They shared a look of complicity that made Daniel feel like an outsider at his own family table. After dinner, while Ethan helped Naomi clear the dishes, Marcus pulled Daniel aside. Can we talk outside? He asked quietly. Daniel nodded, following him to the front porch. The evening air was cool, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. What are you doing, Hayes? Marcus asked without preamble. Spending time with my son, Daniel replied evenly. And Naomi. Marcus shook his head. After 18 years, you show up and think you can just slide into their lives. Become instant family. I'm trying to make up for lost time, Daniel said. Time you can never get back, Marcus pointed out. Time when Naomi struggled to make ends meet. When Ethan needed a father figure. His voice hardened. Time when I was here and you weren't. Daniel felt his temper rise. I didn't know about Ethan. Would it have mattered? Marcus challenged. You were too busy building your empire, just like Naomi said. You'd have sent checks, maybe. But would you have been here for the midnight fevers? The school plays? The nightmares? The accusations hit close to home, because they echoed Daniel's own fears. Would he have been a good father back then? Would he have put his family first? I'll never know, Daniel admitted. But I'm here now. For how long? Marcus demanded. Until the novelty wears off? Until you remember how much you love your freedom? Your success? Daniel stepped closer, anger flaring. You don't know me, Reed. You never did. I know enough, Marcus replied. I know you broke her heart once. I won't stand by and watch you do it again. He took a deep breath. I love them, Hayes. I have for years. They're my family, even if not by blood. The raw emotion in Marcus's voice caught Daniel off guard. You're in love with her, he realized aloud. Marcus didn't deny it. She deserves someone who puts her first, always. Someone like you? Daniel asked. Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. I've been here. Through everything. I would have married her years ago if she'd let me. The thought of Naomi married to Marcus sent a jolt of jealousy through Daniel, but beneath that was a grudging respect for the man who had stood by her when Daniel hadn't. That's her choice, Daniel said quietly. Not yours. Not mine. She's starting to trust you again, Marcus observed. Don't make her regret it. Before Daniel could respond, the front door opened. Naomi stood in the doorway looking between them with suspicion. Everything okay out here? She asked. Fine, Marcus said, his tone light again. Just catching up. He kissed her cheek. I should get going. Tell Ethan to call me when he's feeling better. After Marcus left, Naomi turned to Daniel. What was that about? Daniel considered deflecting, but decided on honesty. He was warning me not to hurt you. Sorry, Ethan. Oh, she seemed unsurprised. Marcus has always been protective. He loves you, Daniel said simply. Naomi sighed. I know he's asked me to marry him 3 times over the years. Why didn't you? Daniel couldn't help asking. She looked at him directly, her eyes holding his. Because he wasn't you. The quiet admission hung between them, charged with possibility. Daniel stepped closer, drawn by a pull that hadn't diminished in 20 years. Naomi, he whispered. She didn't back away. It's always been you, Daniel. Even when I hated you for leaving, even when I tried to move on. She shook her head. It's stupid, isn't it? To hold on to something for so long. Not stupid, he said, reaching out to touch her face. Faithful. Their lips met in a kiss deeper than the one they'd shared before. Years of longing, of regret, of unspoken love poured into the connection between them. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. Stay tonight, Naomi whispered. Daniel searched her eyes. Are you sure? She nodded. Ethan will be happy to find you here in the morning. And you? He asked. A smile touched her lips. I'll be happy too. That night, Daniel slept in the guest room down the hall from Ethan. But knowing that Naomi was just across the hall, that his son slept safely nearby, that he was exactly where he belonged, it was the best night's sleep he'd had in 18 years. Morning found him in the kitchen, making pancakes as Ethan wandered down in pajamas. Still looking tired, but much improved. You're still here, Ethan observed, sliding onto a stool at the counter. Your mom invited me to stay, Daniel explained, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. Hope that's okay. Ethan shrugged. It's cool. He watched Daniel cook for a moment. You make pancakes like Mom does. Daniel smiled. I taught her, actually. Back in college. Really? Ethan seemed surprised by this glimpse into his parents' shared history. Your mom could barely boil water when we met, Daniel told him. I did most of the cooking. Wow. Ethan accepted the plate of pancakes Daniel slid across to him. Mom never mentioned that. There's a lot you don't know about us, Daniel said gently. About how we were together. Ethan poured syrup over his breakfast. So tell me. Daniel leaned against the counter. We met in physics class. Your mom was struggling with the math and I offered to tutor her. Mom, struggling with math. Ethan looked skeptical. Hard to believe, I know. She's brilliant with numbers now. Daniel smiled at the memory. But back then she needed help. And I needed an excuse to spend time with the most beautiful girl on campus. As they ate breakfast together, Daniel shared stories of his early days with Naomi, their first date at a campus coffee shop, the road trip they took over spring break, the tiny apartment they shared after graduation. Ethan listened, absorbing this new understanding of his parents' past. Naomi found them like that, laughing over pancakes, sharing stories, when she came downstairs. She paused in the doorway, a soft smile spreading across her face at the sight of her son and his father bonding over breakfast. Good morning, she said. They both looked up, matching grins on their faces. In that moment, Daniel saw clearly what he'd been missing all these years, and what he might have found again, a family. His family. And he silently vowed never to let them go again. Over the next few weeks, a new rhythm developed in their lives. Daniel visited almost daily, bringing dinner or staying to help Ethan with his NASA projects. Weekends found the three of them exploring the city together, making up for lost time. Ethan's health improved quickly. He returned to NASA training with new energy, proudly introducing Daniel to his instructors as "my dad." Each time he used the word, Daniel felt his heart swell. One Sunday afternoon, they gathered in Naomi's backyard for a barbecue. Daniel manned the grill while Ethan set up a small rocket launch in the open space near the fence. "Don't burn those burgers," Naomi called from where she arranged plates on the patio table. "I know what I'm doing," Daniel replied with a grin. "Trust me." "That's what you said in college when you nearly set the apartment on fire trying to make birthday cake." Ethan looked up from his rocket. "You set an apartment on fire?" "It was just a small flame," Daniel protested. "Your mother exaggerates. The fire department came," Naomi countered, laughing. "The entire building had to evacuate." "It was barely smoking," Daniel insisted. But his eyes twinkled with amusement. Ethan shook his head. "You two are weird." But Daniel noticed the smile on his son's face. Ethan seemed to enjoy seeing his parents together, discovering the history they shared before he was born. As they ate, Daniel watched his small family with a contentment he'd never felt before. His massive house suddenly seemed cold and empty compared to this modest backyard filled with laughter and love. "I was thinking," he said carefully, "maybe we could take a trip together." "The three of us." Ethan looked up from his burger. "What kind of trip?" "There's a space symposium in Florida next month," Daniel suggested. "Your mother mentioned you wanted to attend." "I could get us all tickets." "Make a vacation of it. For real?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "Those tickets are impossible to get. Not for someone who donates to the space program," Daniel said with a wink. "Can you take the time off work?" Naomi asked Ethan. "NASA would probably count it as training," he replied. "The symposium features astronauts from the latest mission." "Then it's settled," Daniel said, pleased by Ethan's enthusiasm. "Our first family vacation." The words hung in the air, significant and weighty. Family vacation. As if they'd been a family all along instead of strangers just weeks ago. "That sounds nice," Naomi said softly, her eyes meeting Daniel's across the table. Later, as Ethan prepared to launch his rocket, the doorbell rang. Naomi went to answer it and returned with Marcus, who carried a bakery box. "I brought dessert," he announced, his smile fading slightly when he spotted Daniel at the grill. "Didn't realize you had company." "Dad's been showing me how to grill properly," Ethan said easily, not noticing how Marcus flinched at the word dad. "That's great," Marcus replied, his voice tight. He set the box on the table. "Chocolate cake. Ethan's favorite." "Thanks, Marcus," Ethan said. "You're just in time to see my launch." As Ethan explained his rocket design to Marcus, Daniel moved beside Naomi. "Does he always show up unannounced?" he asked quietly. "He's family," Naomi reminded him. "He's always welcome here." The word stung more than Daniel cared to admit. He watched as Marcus helped Ethan make final adjustments to the rocket, their easy camaraderie obvious. "Ready?" Ethan called. 3, 2, 1, launch! The small rocket shot into the air with a whoosh, climbing high before its parachute deployed. It floated gracefully back to Earth as they all applauded. "Not bad," Marcus said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. "But I bet we could modify the fuel mix to get more altitude." "That's what Dad suggested," Ethan replied. "He showed me some formulas they're using at his company." Again, Marcus's smile tightened at Ethan's casual reference to Daniel as Dad. Daniel noticed a small satisfaction warming his chest. They gathered around the table for cake, the conversation flowing easily, despite the undercurrent of tension between the two men. Daniel watched as Marcus laughed at Naomi's jokes, touched her arm casually, moved around her kitchen with familiar ease. "I hear you're quite the hero at the hospital," Marcus said when conversation turned to Ethan's health scare. "Staying all night, playing concerned father." The slight emphasis on playing wasn't lost on Daniel. "I was concerned," he replied evenly. "Any father would be." "Of course," Marcus agreed, his tone suggesting otherwise. "Must have been quite the change from your usual routine. 5-star hotels, private jets, models half your age." Naomi shot Marcus a warning look. "Marcus." "Then why wait?" Daniel leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We've already lost 18 years, Naomi. I don't want to waste another day." "What about Ethan?" she asked. "This affects him too." "We'll talk to him together," Daniel promised. If he's not ready, we'll wait. But I think he might surprise you. Naomi studied his face. You're serious? Completely. Daniel squeezed her hand. I love you, Naomi. I never stopped loving you. And I hope, you feel the same way. A slow smile spread across her face. I do. God help me, I do. Back at the hotel, they found Ethan waiting in the lobby. His face lit up when he saw them. You guys won't believe what happened, he said excitedly. Dr. Ramirez, the head of propulsion research, invited me to join a special project team. They're developing a new engine for the Mars mission, and they want me to work on it. That's amazing, honey. Naomi hugged him tightly. Congratulations, Daniel added, clapping him on the shoulder. I'm so proud of you. The three of them celebrated. In the hotel lounge, Ethan animatedly describing the project details. Daniel and Naomi exchanged smiles over their son's head, their earlier conversation temporarily set aside in favor of this moment of triumph. Later that night, after Ethan had gone to his room, Daniel walked Naomi to her door. Think about what I said, he murmured, kissing her softly. No pressure, but think about it. She nodded, her eyes warm. I will. The rest of the trip passed in a blur of activities and scientific discussions. On their final night, a special presentation was scheduled at the Kennedy Space Center. Engineers from NASA's current class, including Ethan, would share their research with industry leaders. Daniel and Naomi sat in the front row, watching proudly as Ethan took the stage. He looked confident in his NASA uniform, his voice steady as he explained his work on cooling systems for extended spaceflight. And finally, Ethan said, as he concluded his presentation, I'd like to thank the people who made this possible. My mother, Naomi Carter, who supported my dreams from the beginning, and my father, Daniel Hayes, who, though he came into my life recently, has shown me that it's never too late to build a relationship that matters. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes at the public acknowledgement. Beside him, Naomi squeezed his hand tightly. After the presentation, a small reception was held for the engineers and their families. Ethan moved through the crowd with ease, introducing his parents to his colleagues with obvious pride. So you're the famous Daniel Hayes, said a distinguished man in a NASA blazer. Your son speaks highly of you. The feeling is mutual, Daniel replied, his chest swelling with pride. As the evening wound down, Ethan pulled his parents aside. I've been thinking, he said, about us, about the future. What about it? Naomi asked. Ethan took a deep breath. I think we should try living together, the three of us. Daniel and Naomi exchanged surprised looks. Really? Naomi asked. Ethan nodded. Yeah, Dad's at our house all the time anyway, and with this new project I'll be staying in the NASA dorms most weekdays. He shrugged, trying to seem casual though his eyes betrayed his emotion. It just seems right, to be a family, for real. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. Oh, honey. Is that okay? Ethan asked, suddenly uncertain. It's more than okay, Daniel assured him, pulling his son into a hug. It's perfect. 2 months later, they stood in the yard of a new house, not Daniel's mansion or Naomi's modest home, but something in between, a spacious place with a big backyard for rocket launches, a top-floor observatory for stargazing, and enough room for all three of them to have their own space while still being together. What do you think? Daniel asked as they walked through the empty rooms, their footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. I think it's perfect, Naomi said, her fingers laced with his. Ethan had already claimed the top-floor bedroom with its direct access to the small dome where Daniel had installed a telescope. He was mapping out where his space posters would go, his excitement palpable. Are you sure about this? Naomi asked quietly. It's a big change from your place. Daniel looked around at the sunlit house, imagining it filled with their voices, their laughter, their love. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That evening, they shared their first meal in their new home, pizza on paper plates in the empty dining room. To new beginnings, Daniel toasted, raising his paper cup of soda. To family, Ethan added, his eyes bright. To love, Naomi finished, her smile warming Daniel from the inside out. Later, after Ethan had gone upstairs to set up his computer, Daniel pulled Naomi onto the porch swing he'd installed that afternoon, a replica of the one from her old house. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Very," she replied, leaning into him. "I never thought we'd be here, you know, after everything." "I always hoped," Daniel admitted. "Even when I tried to convince myself I'd moved on." She looked up at him. "No regrets?" "Just one," he said. "That I missed so much time with you and Ethan." He brushed a curl from her face. "But I'm not missing another minute." From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. Naomi's eyes widened. "Daniel, I know it might seem fast," he said quickly, "and we can wait as long as you want. But I want you to know that I'm in this forever." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Marry me, Naomi. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you and Ethan how much you mean to me." Tears filled her eyes. "You're sure, after only a few months?" "After 20 years, he corrected. 20 years of knowing that no one else could ever measure up to you." She touched the ring gently. "Ask me again." "Naomi Carter, will you marry me?" Her smile was radiant. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As they sealed the promise with a kiss, the porch door opened. Ethan stood there, grinning. "Finally," he said. "I was wondering when you'd get around to that." "You knew?" Naomi asked. Ethan rolled his eyes good-naturedly. "Dad asked my permission last week, very old school." Daniel shrugged. "I wanted to do it right." "Did she say yes?" Ethan asked. "She did," Daniel confirmed, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. Ethan joined them on the porch, the three of them huddled together on the swing. Above them, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The same stars that had guided Ethan's dreams, that had witnessed Naomi's struggles, that had watched over Daniel's empty success. Now, those stars shone down on a family reunited, a love rekindled, a future bright with promise. "Look," Ethan said, pointing upward, "a shooting star." They watched it streak across the sky, a brilliant flash of light against the darkness. "Make a wish," Naomi whispered. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened, them to look at his family, the son he'd found, the woman he'd never stopped loving. "I don't need to," he said softly. "I already have everything I could wish for." As night deepened around them, the three stayed close, talking and laughing under the stars. In that moment, Daniel knew with perfect clarity that his life's greatest achievement wasn't his company or his fortune. It was this family, this love, this second chance he'd been given, and he would treasure it, protect it, and nurture it for all the days to come.